Hello. First class of Brainy Talks online. This class started this summer. Very few people, but I got such good feedback from it. I thought I would continue it just this fall. We'll see how it goes. Mostly I was inspired to do this because of the plethora of podcasts now. Podcasts are, I'm sure you've noticed, taking over. There's a lot of really nonsense on it, but there's a lot of podcasts that have so much information that it's so relaxing. You can listen to them while you're cooking, you can listen to them while you're driving, or you can just sit there, turn the lights out and listen. Do it however you like. But this is a new way of getting very valuable information. I still use YouTube, of course, the videos, TED Talks, all sorts of things, PBS, and I include it all in this class. What I want to do is tie this class to the book class whenever I can. Sometimes not possible, but in general, the book that we read will then be tied to this class. So we read Exit West, which I don't know because you don't talk enough in that comments box. I know what a few people thought, but it's really important that you send your comments. And if you don't want to write in the box for some reason on the YouTube, send me what you think in an email and I will circulate it. Or if you just want to be private, just send it to me. Whatever you want, but think, talk, Brainy Talk. Get it? Get it. Okay. I was thinking, I sent you, and I will every class, I sent you a sort of a preview essay of what we're going to talk. And so going from Exit West, obviously this class is about migration and the catastrophe, really, that the world is facing with all these people wandering around, trying to find a place to live and work. It's pretty heartbreaking. And we're going to explore it in depth today. And obviously, I'm giving you so much material, not just today, but I'm going to guide you a little bit. Not that any of you need that much guidance, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I was thinking of a title when I sent out the essay, and the title I came up with is Migrants, the Horror Behind Them and the Absolute Uphill Battle They Face. I told you the anecdote about the YouTube driver that I had here. I left out the part about after he told me about how he had left Bosnia, and for the whole cab drive, filled in all the details. When we got where we were going, he jumped out, he embraced me, had tears in his eyes, and he said, it's just, I can't believe I've talked to somebody who really understands this. And he meant, he's a college professor who came and his entire life changed. He lost everything. So that is the depth of all this, and that really, that is quintessentially what happens to these people. So I'm just thinking that, if you are what you eat, this is what I think, and just as much you are what you read, and just as much now in this day and age, you are what you see and what you hear. So let's use it. Let's use it for this in this class and really, learn some things. I've already chastised you about not making enough comments, but come on. Get just typing. You don't really have to. I know some people just want to listen, and that's fine. But I would like it very much because I feel like I'm sitting here alone with the plant. So I want to know what you're thinking. Okay, so our subject today then, let's say, is the global crisis of migration. We want to think back, how did this all happen? This has been going on since the beginning of time. Wars, people leave countries, they move on. After the Second World War, people leave countries, they move on. So it's not that, but we've come to a point now, it is my belief, that there are so many people and the world, the globe is so crowded, it's very, very hard to accommodate people. And our first go-round with this, which was Israel, They took Palestine and gave part to the Jewish people to make Israel, and we're still going. That's how valuable all this land is. That's how difficult these problems are. We're going to hear somebody talk now about the real refugee crisis and what happens with these people.
Often refugees are defined by what they've lost, which is a lot: their homes, their communities, their jobs, their friends, in many cases family members. But I think it's also important to remember that it's a mistake just to think about refugees that way, because they're just people. So they also have a lot of things. They have hope. You wouldn't get up and leave your house, leave everything behind, and run if you didn't have hope for a better future. They also many times have education, particularly in some of the most recent crises like Syria. Business people, doctors, other professionals. Many are also laborers and farmers, so they have skills. They have a willingness to work. And they also have a great desire to live in peace. Nobody who flees conflict wants to go and live in more conflict. So these are all things that refugees actually bring to communities after they flee. Where are they from? 40% are from Syria. It's in the news. But I didn't want to just talk about Syria because so many are from other places. The big three countries are Afghanistan, Syria, and Somalia, but refugees are fleeing in all parts of the world. So Congo, Iraq, Burma, the northern triangle of Central America, which is Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, so that right in our backyard, from all over. And where are they now? Well, we all see in the news that there are over 1 million in Europe. But that's really what made us aware of the refugee crisis, but it's been going on for a much longer time. There are millions of refugees in other places that are hosted by much poorer parts of the world. Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Kenya, Ethiopia, Mexico. So refugees are everywhere, and this was kind of more of a hidden crisis, or something that we didn't pay a lot of attention to until we saw refugees coming into Europe, and all of a sudden, everyone said this is a crisis. So keep that in mind. By the way, these are some pictures that are taken by some of my colleagues at HIAS, some of the refugees that we serve around the world.
When you see things like this, and when you hear this woman talking, the thing that strikes me is how extraordinarily vulnerable we are. And I don't want to keep talking about Exit West, but I thought that is what he did so well. He brought that point home to us. We are all vulnerable. It doesn't take that much to tip a country, especially if you live in one of these little countries. Everybody is open to the pain of this. Yeah, I want to review a little bit different thoughts about this refugee crisis. There's many words you can use. You can use refugee, you can use migrant, but a lot of people are giving a lot of thought to this. And so I want you to hear this about our responsibility, normal people, our responsibility in the refugee crisis.
For me, this is not just a professional obligation because I run an NGO supporting refugees and displaced people around the world. It's personal. I love this picture. That really handsome guy on the right, that's not me. That's my dad, Ralph, in London in 1940, with his father, Samuel. They were Jewish refugees from Belgium. They fled the day the Nazis invaded. And I love this picture too. It's a group of refugee children arriving in England in 1946 from Poland. And in the middle is my mother, Marion. She was sent to start a new life in a new country on her own at the age of 12. I know this. If Britain had not admitted refugees in the 1940s, I certainly would not be here today. Yet 70 years on, the wheel has come full circle. The sound is of walls being built, vengeful political rhetoric, humanitarian values and principles on fire in the very countries that 70 years ago said never again to statelessness and hopelessness for the victims of war. Last year, every minute, 24 more people were displaced from their homes by conflict, violence, and persecution.
Now, the real shocker to me is that Australia set a precedent I personally was not listening or looking, I guess. I didn't have Brainy Talk to keep me aware, but I don't know. I hope that you're all aware of what Australia did. They started getting boatloads and boatloads of people coming from via Indonesia. This is early in the game, early in the 2000s. And this sets up exactly the dilemma for everybody. The Australians are not monsters, they're people. But when you get boatloads and boatloads of very needy people arriving on your shores, then of course you say, wait a minute, where's the medical care coming from? Where are the schools from? Where are they going to live? Australia could absorb some for their workforce, but those days are gone when Australia was begging people to come. So this is what the Australian government did. It's very controversial. They had this island of Manos. They sent them all there. They built what is considered by many a concentration camp. I mean, that's a pretty emotional word. They built a camp. They said, nobody gets onto our island continent of Australia. Sorry, but we can't do this. We can't afford it. We can't do this. Stop coming. If you come, we will intercept your boats and we will send you to this place. And we now have, it's a very interesting video to see.
For 4 years, nearly 2,000 men have been held on Manus Island, which is part of Papua New Guinea. Australia's government exiled them, refusing to hear their refugee claims after they landed in Australia. For that, the men are being compensated an average of almost $30,000 each, more than $50 million in total. Lawyers launched a class action against Australia's government, saying it had failed in its duty of care towards the refugees and wrongly imprisoned them. Conditions in the Manus Island prison camp have been condemned by human rights groups. One refugee was murdered after local people broke into the centre during a protest 3 years ago. 2 more died, a coroner later found, through inadequate medical care.
They came to Australia seeking protection, but rather than consider their cases on shore, the Australian government sent this vulnerable group of people to be held on Manus Island indefinitely.
Most of the men being compensated are still on Manus Island. Papua New Guinea's government says the open prison will be shut in October, but it's unclear where the refugees will go. Some may be resettled in the United States because of an agreement between Australia's Prime Minister and Barack Obama. Reluctantly, Donald Trump has said he'll honour it, but it only commits the United States to security vetting people. It could reject them all. Otherwise, the men are being told to return to the countries they fled, such as Iran or Syria, or resettle in Papua New Guinea, a country with an extremely high crime rate and no history of integrating refugees. One refugee on Manus Island that Al Jazeera spoke to was subdued about the court victory and compensation.
It is good that after 4 years eventually we could see a little bit justice, but actually it is not justice because we didn't do any crime and we want to have our freedom.
More recently, I'm sorry to tell you, if you take the film class, we're so familiar with Lampedusa in Italy. That is where a huge stream was coming from Libya. It's very close to Sicily, and so they did their very best to accommodate these people. That's been, the Italians are stopping that. Many, people are saying, coming to this point where we cannot keep doing this. So we're at a little bit of an impasse now. Amnesty International has complained very recently and objected very strongly because what they were doing was they would leave Libya in these little boats, and as you know, I mean, some of them would sink, and then we have bodies washing up. So they were sort of preempting it, the Italian government, which I, of course, thought was wonderful. And we saw that in that film, Fire at Sea. If they knew of a boat out there, they immediately went out and rescued them. I mean, they didn't wait for it to sink. The Italian government is now forbade this. And Amnesty International has intervened and said, has objected strongly, but they're trying to stop all of this now. Preemptively rescuing these people.
Call to action from Italy comes as Amnesty International denounces abuses in the handling of the refugee and migrant crisis, and this on both shores of the Mediterranean. Sharon Gaffney has more.
Women and young children were among the 10,000 migrants who arrived in Italian ports over 3 days last week. Because of its proximity to Libya, Italy is the main destination for those fleeing North Africa for Europe. The EU is planning to provide training to the Libyan Coast Guard in an effort to slow the influx of migrants. But Amnesty International has condemned the proposal, describing it as reckless, inadequate and in some cases unconscionable. It's also accused the Coast Guard of colluding with traffickers and abusing migrants.
We have seen the Libyan Coast Guard misuse firearms. We know they're not adequately trained. And perhaps the worst part is that we know that the people who are disembarked in Libya are going back to unlawful detention centres where they're facing torture, rape and other unthinkable abuses.
The proposal to boost support for the Libyan Coast Guard is among the measures announced by the European Commission as part of its multi-million euro plan to deal with the migrant crisis. Amnesty says current EU policies aren't working and are responsible for the rising death toll in the Mediterranean. More than 2,000 people have drowned so far this year while attempting to make the perilous crossing into Europe.
You throw in after that Poland, Hungary, these countries who put up barbed wire, made their little walls, and just said, nobody come. Sorry. We could take 1,000, but you're not coming in here. Move on. And that's how so many went to Germany, because Germany did not do that. The argument about Germany, it's not an argument, the explanation about Germany is they so desperately need workers that they opened their arms to all these people. Even Angela Merkel, a woman that I admire very much, and I think most people in the world do, has finally conceded that there are limits. And I'm not sure that you're aware. I was not aware till I prepared for this class that Germany is just about closed down now. They cannot take any more people. Canada still seems to have their arms open in a limited way. I think we won't even go into the United States. We know what's going on here. So we're almost at a crisis point. If any of you have any ideas of how we should be behaving, there is the moral issue too, which he, of course, raised in the book. Do we have a moral obligation to people? I'm asking a question. I think we do. I think there has to be a way to settle this. There is some precedent in world history. Israel, Palestine, look how that was handled. It's a tremendous mess now. So it's not like you just go somewhere and say, oh, give these people this land. That doesn't work either. So this is a real dilemma, and it is something morally to think about. So I want you thinking not more important, but besides the thinking, besides the reading, besides the watching, please, respond. Go to the comments box. If you don't like the comments box, then you can email me. I will circulate. If you don't want it circulated, you'll say private, fine. But the point of all this is there's so much information there, and I'm giving you, I know, a lot. This could keep you occupied for months. And you may go on yourself. Everything that I give you has some link to something else. That's what's so great about this. So let me hear from you. And in 2 weeks, we'll have another talk class. And I'm so glad we started. And I'm watching and waiting for your responses. See you next time.